Okay, we're back. So we've got cows grazing off the long grass and a gate open. They're autonomous in water because they can get up to the lake. We might have a little pump at the lake with a little trough, and they can come down to the little yard here to be milked, and to come in and sleep in their cow shed, and heat a greenhouse as well. All the little combinations that we get in any classic permaculture system worth its salt. So the idea is have the cows eat the long grass for 3 days and then move on to the next field, which afterwards you end up with a field full of cowpats and short to medium length grass. So what we can do with that is bring chickens in. Okay, my chickens are a bit off scale. If they were that big, they'd be worth a fortune, and there'd be a lot more of them as well for that size field. We're looking at a flock of 50 chickens, so 4 little houses, mobile houses. I've been building with wheelbarrow handles and wheelbarrow wheels to be able to lift them up, move them around. But not the pointy version. I've done the pointy version. Problem is the chickens roost on the top on starry nights, and they're all there lined up. So when you go to close them up, you end up having to rip them off the roof and throw them in the hole. And by the time you've done 2 or 3, or the 2 or 3 that are left, then realise what's going on and they run off and they get eaten by foxes. So chickens are going to scratch out the cowpats and eat the maggots and keep the fly population down to a minimum, which is good for everybody, humans and animals. And it means that the chickens are feeding themselves as well. And then we're going to have a field that's got sort of scratched out grass, been nibbled off a bit by the chickens. There's a few holes in the grass where there's been a cowpat on it for a couple of days, mulching the grass out. And there's also some chicken shit in there in the recipe as well. So we're going to have a rest period. Okay, so the field's going to rest up for 3 days before the sheep come in. And if we've got 5 cows in the system, or 4 cows and a horse, well, we'll have 5 sheep. Just as many small herbivores as many big ones. And they're really going to nibble the grass down, and do that lawnmower thing and get it nice and short. And when grass is under attack like that, it thickens up, which is why if you mow when you've got thin grass, if you've just sown it, you mow it from time to time, it thickens up. That's what grass does when it gets eaten off. So there we've completed the cycle. Now the logistics of that, the actual work involved, is a bit more complicated than the opening and shutting of gates. Because even though hedgerows have got many virtues, in that we can plant all sorts of stuff in there, they are stock proof only for big animals. If you want to get hedgerows sheep proof, you really need to know what you're doing. My grandfather knew exactly what he was doing. He left us in 1992 with nearly 300 sheep. And didn't tell anybody how to maintain the hedges. And by 1994, the sheep had just ripped holes in everything, because he did spend most of his time just maintaining the hedges, splitting the stems and weaving it back together to keep it stock proof. And it all just grew out. Pigs, if you're going to put pigs in the system, we'll come to that in a minute. Pigs are designed to be able to put holes in hedges. They've got nice, short, pointy nose, and a cone-shaped head, and very muscular. They can just find any hole and widen it for you. Quite thick-skinned as well. And chickens, well, chickens are very good at getting out. I am working on a test at the moment, where I'm making live wire. That's weaving willow. I do my swales. And once I've done my swale, get the soil nice and soft, and I'm planting the willow in diagonally and weaving it together in a crisscross pattern, tight enough that it would be chicken proof. Wouldn't be chick proof, but it'd be chicken proof. Chicks when they get out, they do a lot less damage. And a chicken that gets out into your vegetables can undo a whole day's work in about an hour. So you want to keep chickens in. So the idea is as well to have this all going on while the hedges are growing, because that is a lot of hedge to plant, and you can't get that planted in a year. You probably can't even get it planted in 5 years. So we're going to have some lightweight plastic electrifiable fencing, which I've been playing with for the last year and a half. This is quite good stuff. I've made a trolley to be able to hook it onto, and transport it about nicely from one place to the next, because it does snag everywhere, and if you don't deal with it in a very logical, calm manner, I have to sometimes meditate for 10 minutes before going and dealing with the stuff, quite honestly. It can send you absolutely round the twist if it gets tangled up, or if you don't deal with it in a very logical, calm, zen manner. So we're going to need 2.5 rolls of this wire, this plastic fencing, magic plastic fencing with the posts in it, to fence these off. Obviously, while the cows are there, once the hedges are up, the cows won't need any fencing, but even once the hedges are up, the other animals will need fencing. So we move the cows out, we come in with our rolls of fencing, and we fence the field off, and then we can go and get the wheelbarrow houses, bring the wheelbarrow houses in, and then we can just put a bit of netting from gate to gate, okay, or even if it's from here to here, we've got the path coming round here, we can block all that off, and we can shoo the chickens round quite easily from one field to another, same with the sheep. So this is going to be quite a hard day's work. You're going to open a gate, close a gate, then you're going to put up fences for about 1.5 hours just to fence off the one field, move the chicken houses, move the chickens, let that rest up, and then you've got the field here that was resting. That's fenced as well, because we're not going to take the fences down when the chickens are finished. Move the chickens out, leave the fence up, okay, and then move the sheep in, and then the fencing that was in this field becomes the fencing that will go into this field once the cows are finished with it. So you need three lots of fencing to be able to run that round. So it's a bit of an investment, but in the long term, it's hours and hours of work saved. That is going to take you the best part of a morning. By the time you've milked your cows, done your run round, collected your eggs, and obviously the sheep will need water as well, as will the chickens. So we're going to have some kind of mobile water trough that will go from field to field, and that will be part of the horse's daily work. Will be to have a little cart behind it, a water barrel, plastic water barrel. Take the water barrel up to the pond or here at the bottom. We'll turn on a pump, fill the barrel up, and bring fresh water down to everybody, and then the horse can have the rest of the day off unless there's other stuff to do. So that's the cycle, and that's a regenerative cycle. When you do that, as I said earlier, from what I've seen, grass grows back with furious energy. And the idea is, I said we've got 42 fields. 32 of the fields will be for this pasture cycle. So that'll be going round and round and round. And then we've got 5 spare fields. 5 spare fields for if it gets too hot, if it gets too dry, if it gets too cold, if there's too much snow, and of course for making hay. Okay, so it's 37 fields in the pasture circuit altogether, and the other 5 fields are going to be for another circuit which is going to be integrated into the pasture circuit. So once you've gone round that for 1 year, okay, so once those animals have gone round 4 times, you've now got really, really soft, spongy soil, nice and rich, ready to go to grow some crops in. It's going to move the picture down. Okay. The idea is to go and get a few weaners from a neighbouring farm, and put them into one of the fields with some chicken friends, and get that field ploughed up as much as possible. Get all the roots out. I've done this already with chickens and lots of mulch. I used to go out to work 3 days a week building. And I had 2 metre cube big bags in the back of my van and a rake, and every day in the autumn I used to come back with big bags full of leaves off the side of the road, and I'd be mulching 100 square metre fields with 18 chickens in there, and then growing crops in there afterwards with huge success. So the idea, as it's a bigger surface, and I don't want to be going out collecting leaves on the side of the road anymore, brought the soil up to good quality, got it nice and easy, nice and fluffy, nice and light, full of air pockets, full of life. Get the pigs to rip the ground cover off, get the chickens to scratch it through. And also, because that will be happening after the end of the summer, between the end of the summer and the beginning of autumn, as soon as it starts raining at the end of the summer, get them in there and get that stripped off. And then as for example, if we've got apple trees on this path, and hazelnut trees on this one, and chestnuts up here, as and when the tree harvests are finished, we can put gates at the end, and we can block this off by sector and put the pigs in and get them to clean up what's on the floor. We can run them round from field to field, change field every day, get them to clean up what's under the trees, and put value into what would have been wasted, turn all that wasted fruit and chestnuts and acorns into meat. And then we've got a field that's been ploughed off. We can bring the horse out and harrow it, and we can start growing field crops. And the field crops that I'll be wanting to grow, ideally, there'll be cereals, so there'll be some wheat, oats. We're huge consumers of oats, or I am personally. And also start getting into things like flax, either for linseed oil or for the fibre. Hemp, same for the oil or the fibre, or for chopping it up for making insulation. And having a field of vegetables, 800 square metres of vegetable patch, for growing bulk crops, even though there will be vegetable growing going on around the yard, and around the house on another bit of land set up permanently for growing vegetables in raised beds. And so we've got these 5 fields here, and the idea would be that every year we take one out of the pasture system, and we put it into a 5-year rotative system, where we can grow all of these extra field crops that do need to be grown. If they're going to be grown with any success, they do need to be grown in bulk, and they do need to be grown not as a monoculture, but as an intended monoculture, even though you're going to get all your poppies and your weeds and everything in there. We can do like wheat with leguminous in there, etc., etc., because we're now starting to get the tools where we can separate the grains out, so we can grow peas and wheat at the same time and separate those out. After 5 years of pulling the resources out of the soil, to turn that into all these other products that we need, then one of the hay fields, put all the hay onto a cart, bring it down with a horse, and then shake all the hay out. Just shake the heads off. We're not going to mulch the soil. Shake all the hay out to get all the seeds out of the hay. And also when we're cleaning out the hay store, sweep up and bring all that seed of all that good pasture seed that we've got and re-sow it as pasture. And then as that starts coming up, bring the sheep in. We could bring the sheep round on a mission just for half a day, or even just for an hour, to come and nibble that off and get it to thicken out and get it back in as quickly as possible. So it's going to take a year to get it back in, and then after a year it's back into the pasture loop and another one comes out. So we'll always have 5, and this one would then come out, it'd be pigged off, and as this one's being pigged off, this one's being put back into pasture. So that's going to move round the farm, and that's going to move round the farm, 42 fields, 40 divided by 5, that's going to move round on a 9-year cycle. So every 9 years, that's going to come back. Okay, personally, I find that stable, I find that regenerative, and that just eases up my conscience about ploughing up and doing the field crops, which everybody's running around saying we've got to stop ploughing, we've got to stop growing cereals, everybody's allergic to gluten and all this other rubbish. Okay, if people are allergic to gluten, it's because the cereals we're growing are shit. It's not because cereal is a bad thing. It's the same with the meat. It's not because the industrials are doing bad job of raising meat. They're doing an absolute disgusting job of raising meat and ruining everything. That doesn't mean that we need to give up meat and all become vegans. We can put everything back into place, and that is another one of my black beasts that I carry around on my back, that I want to be able to show that we can do things without throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Okay, now the next most difficult thing in that kind of design will be the fence posts, which we'll be coming to in 2 seconds.